Hi, my name is Carrie Jones. I'm an associate professional clinical counselor and an associate marriage and family therapist. And I want to welcome you to my channel, The Other Side, where we will take the hand that you've been dealt, one that seems like a losing hand, and we'll flip it and make some adjustments so that you can win at this thing we call life. And today I want to talk to you about divorcing a narcissist. And if you are contemplating this process or you are already in the midst of it, you already know that divorcing a narcissist is going to be challenging. So I want to provide you with some tips and potentially a strategy that you can use based upon my own experience of successfully divorcing a narcissist and on my clinical judgment and knowledge that I've acquired along the way. And the first thing you need to know when you are approaching this process is that it's going to be long and possibly expensive and stressful. The one thing that a therapist told me very early on when I hadn't even quite filed for a divorce yet is that the cost of freedom is high and you got to prepare yourself to pay it because you are the one who's going to have to free yourself. You are the one who's going to need to pay this cost. And though you may get help from other people around you, from your support system or from complete strangers, the cost is on you. The burden of freeing yourself is on you. And that's the first thing you really need to know. There may need to be attorneys involved, especially if the narcissist has resources in order to hire an attorney, because they are going to attempt to destroy you and they're going to use an attorney to do it. So you need an attorney who's also equipped and experienced to do the same thing, and maybe not with the same intention that they have for you, but you're going to need an attorney. You're also going to need to prepare yourself to really go the distance. Yes, in the process, there is a point at which you can develop a settlement and you can come to agreement on terms. But the truth is, when have you ever really agreed? So this may need to be a process that goes all the way to trial. You can attempt the settlement, and I did the same thing. But ultimately, I realized I just needed to go to trial and get everything that I came for, which was my freedom, ultimately. And so that is really the first thing you need to know and to prepare yourself for as you are embarking on this process. It's going to be long. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be stressful. So just prepare yourself accordingly. Set your life up so that you've got as many resources that you can funnel and focus on this thing. Your energy, your positive attitude, your strength, all the things that you need. So yes, you're going to still have to live life. If you have children, you're still going to have to take care of your children. You're going to have to go to your job, but do the best that you can to set your life up in this moment so that you can focus on this and win. And that doesn't mean like this gets your complete focus. Enjoy your life. You're going to need the outlet of friends and family and all of those things in order to show up as your best self when it comes to this court process. And so that would be one of the first steps. The next thing in this process is to make sure you have really good boundaries with the narcissist. One of the boundaries that you can put in place that they may also agree to, but they could potentially push back on, is communicating only through a parenting communication app like Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents. This is going to be one of your saving graces, because if you decide that you're going to have boundaries and that you're not going to communicate any other way, all the communication you have with the narcissist is going to be court approved. And so that's already one notch in your belt. They're going to slip up at some point on this app and say something or do something that is inappropriate that you'll be able to submit as evidence in court. Yes, you'll be able to submit text messages, and those may influence the judge or the court, but they are not technically admissible. The judge will ultimately say, well, at least this happened in my case, that, oh, this is based upon this evidence, and we disregarded this evidence. But it's hard to disregard something that you've seen. Like if you show a text message that says, with threats or abusive information, yes, the judge will say that they will dismiss it, but it will also be in the back of their heads. So don't necessarily rule out your text and that other evidence that you may have, but in the state of California, at least, text messages are not admissible. And so the texts and the communication on these apps are. And it's quite possible that the narcissist will push back on you, but this is a time for you to set up and enforce and hold firm on your boundaries. If they send you texts, don't respond. Emails are also, I think, court admissible, but these communications on this app are indeed and in fact admissible in court. And so if you can get the person, your ex or your narcissist, not your narcissist, but the narcissist, to communicate with you on the app, the better you are. So essentially, don't respond. Only respond in the app. Only send messages in the app. And maybe don't even respond at all if the messages do not come from the app. And, make it clear that you've asked for the communications to be, to go through this one particular form, and the judge will probably back you up on that. So if the narcissist comes to court and says you're not responding and you're not this, that, or the other, you now have an argument and you can say, hey, I've put up this boundary, and I guess you wouldn't say I've put up this boundary. I've requested that we communicate this way and they've refused to. So you're already, again, building a case for yourself. Even in that exchange in the court, the judge is taking note of the dynamics between you and your soon-to-be ex. And these are all things that will really, I think, help you in the process. And so keeping your boundaries there. There's also your communication with the narcissist. Everything that you do at this point, you can't erase anything you've done in the past. It's all there. You can own it. You can ignore it. You can, determine that you don't want to give any credence to some of your old behavior. The reality is, though, that the abuse and the experiences that you've had with a narcissist create something called reactive abuse. And that is your reaction to their abuse. So if you've dealt with someone who's abusive and then you become abusive towards them, you are not necessarily abusive. You are reacting to their abuse. And judges don't necessarily see it any other way than you being abusive. And so from this point forward, it's important for you to manage your communication with the narcissist, no matter what they say or what they do. Taking on the gray rock approach is going to be one of your best friends. Learning to keep yourself settled no matter what happens and what they're saying to you or about you. At this point, they're going to say a lot of things about you. They're going to lie in court. They're going to lie to their attorneys, who will then promote and perpetuate those lies. They're lying to their family. They may be communicating with some of your family and friends and lying to them. What do you do? Do you really want to spend a lot of time and energy and effort combating all these lies and combating with the narcissist over something that they're going to continue to do? And the reality is, the more that you engage, the more they're going to do it, because they love your energy, even if it's not positive energy. They want all the admiration. They want all the positive attention, but if they can't get it, they will settle for any attention. And the attention that you give to them is going to be used against you in court. It's guaranteed. So at this point, take on the gray rock method, or whatever method that you can take on in terms of communicating with the narcissist. Even if you have children, you don't need to communicate about your relationship with them. You don't need to communicate about anything except for your children. You will have to communicate about your children. It's just court mandated. It doesn't look good for you if you do not. So you communicate about your children, and you do that via the app. Everything else you can really ignore. And that may be difficult. It may feel like foreign. You may feel like you want to defend yourself, but I'm guaranteeing you that if you do it, it will be used against you. So everything you say in the app is also admissible in court. So be careful to only respond to communications that, if you have children, that pertain to children. If you don't have children, that maybe pertain to property. Everything else, is not necessary. It's not required from you. This is, again, one of those times where you're going to need to filter and be mindful of the energy that you are using on this process, because it's going, with the parts of the process that really require your energy are going to require a lot of it. And if you are depleting your energy on fighting and combating and all of the things that are going to happen, you are going to be depleted, and you are setting yourself up to really lose this particular process, because you need to recognize that this is now a war. The moment you decided to file for divorce, and maybe they filed for it, either way, they are intending to destroy you. But especially if you decided to walk away, especially if you decided to file for this divorce, they are doing everything in their power to destroy you. They are lying on you. They are talking to other people who you know about you. They're trying to destroy your character, because, again, the narcissist wants admiration. They want positive attention. And you have decided to take that away from them. And if this is a public setting, right, where people will ultimately know that you're divorcing them, you're leaving them, this has to all be your fault. None of this can be on them. So they will craft the story. They will do all the things and perform all the antics in order to point the attention to you, not realizing that it's actually pointing a huge finger back to them. And if you decide to not react or respond, you are best suited for winning, to be quite honest. And the longer you disturb the process of responding to them, there will be moments when they get silent and when they'll go away, and you'll kind of feel like, ooh, I don't understand. Like, it's quiet, something's coming, or you may grow discomfort with the silence because you are addicted. Their behavior is addictive. And so you could be addicted to the chaos and the drama. Break your addiction. It's really in your best interest, not just for court, but for you in general, as you go on to reclaim your freedom and live your life. For me, there were times when my ex tried to accuse me of various things, even using the communication app. And I just determined I wasn't going to respond. It had nothing to do with my children. It had nothing to do with anything that I was required to respond to. So I did not respond. And I suggest you do the same. And so boundaries, again, is going to be really important. The next thing that is important for you to know is that in court, judges speak the language of law. They're not speaking the language of he said, she said, of, whatever accusations go back and forth. They speak the language of law. And everything that you present in court will need to be filtered through that language. So you will need to know laws. For me, I bought do I have it here? I would have shown you the book that I bought for California. Maybe I'll show you a snapshot at the end. But for the state of California, there's a family law book, and I bought the book. You can buy it on Amazon. I also ordered the Kindle version so that I could search, right? Do an electronic search to find terms that I thought would apply to my particular case. And yes, I had an attorney, but I needed to know what was happening so that I could provide even my attorneys with evidence and information that would be in line with what the law said. And so that was really important for me, because your emotions need to be limited. You can't be shouting back and forth in court. There will be times where when you're asked to speak, or when you kind of ask if you can speak to the judge, you may become emotional and you may cry, and that's okay. That's going to happen. But in terms of, he's lying. You can't, she said that's wrong. You can do it in court. It's just not going to help you. So wrangle your emotions and develop the language of the law. Understand what the laws are. And for me, one law that was beneficial was in 2020, the state of California adopted a coercive control law. Prior to that, when I had gone to get a restraining order, I wasn't granted one because the law only provided that like abuse was physical, that you had to be hit or there had to be a threat of being hit in order for you to receive protection under the law. As of 2020, California adopted Senate Bill 1141, and that bill incorporates now disturbing the peace of others as an offense that could grant you a restraining order from someone. And so that was really pivotal for me. It was really important as I discovered that particular law because, you know, in 2019, I was distraught that I could not be protected from this person who was literally disturbing my peace. And so knowing the laws in your state is going to be really important. Looking up to determine, I think a lot of states here recently have adopted coercive control laws or coercive control language in their laws of protection because, you know, I think we all know narcissism is on a rise and their behavior is getting out of control, and women and men actually need protection from this sort of behavior. There's been tragedies that have occurred as a result of women and men, I think, but more women who have appealed to the court for protection and didn't receive it. And so, you know, tragedy occurred. And so states are now adopting coercive control laws. You want to look up new laws in your area to see what it is that's available to you in terms of protection and in terms of developing a strategy for your divorce process. And so the next piece of the law is getting an attorney. Attorneys already speak the language of law, but finding the right attorney is going to be really, really important. You want to find an attorney who aligns with your mission and your vision for your divorce process. Attorneys, like anyone else, have a job, and I think when they really get good at it, they have a process that they go through. And you want someone whose process is flexible enough to incorporate what it is that you see for yourself. I had two different attorneys in my process. My initial attorney left the firm, but she was excellent. The moment that I hired her and started working with her, she would listen to me. She was billing me, but she would listen to me. She listened to my story. She listened to my experience. And when we went to court the very first time, she had already drafted, I don't know what it's called, but like a memorandum or some kind of action from the court. I don't think it was a request for orders, but it was to basically penalize my ex. She anticipated that he was going to need to be penalized for requesting a request for orders. So he requested a request for orders because he wanted me to comply with something that I wasn't willing to comply to. I wasn't willing to communicate every single thing about my kids to him when he could go and figure it out himself. He had, you know, partial legal custody, or we shared legal custody, so he could go to the court and ask them for the information. Or not the court, he can go to the school, he can go to coaches, he had access to everyone, but he wanted me to be the one to give him all the information. And I determined that I wasn't going to do it. And so my attorney anticipated that this particular action, he was basically wasting the court's time and he was wasting my resources. And it actually happened that when we got to court, he had no evidence to support all the things that he was accusing me of and that he was requesting. And because of that, the judge looked at what my attorney submitted and she granted me a fine or a fee of like $1,000 or something. But what it did was it set the precedent for him that he couldn't just bring me to court and waste my time and my money and my resources. And that it also, I think, set something to the judge about, okay, this person, this is now a part of the court's records. And the judge can now look at this to see the pattern of what was to come. And so having an attorney that is going to anticipate your needs, who's going to create a strategy for you, for your particular case, is going to be really important. There are attorneys, I think, that have gone through these processes with people who are divorcing a narcissist, and they already know what to expect, and they're willing to listen to you and to create a strategy that's going to serve you and to help you and to support you as you go through this process. So finding an attorney who listens, finding an attorney who's supportive, not dismissive, not punitive, that's not controlling or treating you similar to the way the narcissist would treat you is going to be really important. Finding someone who actually cares, who cares about their work, who cares about you, is going to be really important in this process. You want someone who's fearless, who's going to potentially even take risks, right, in order to secure the freedom that you want. And their kindness is going to also be really important. And so really take your time to find an attorney. I know that you may feel pressure to just get this done, or you want to just get someone who says they do all this. It's fine what they say. You want to feel connected with them. You want to feel and know that they have your best interest at heart. And maybe you won't know it in the beginning, but you want to you want to rely on your instinct and your intuition to tell you that this person is probably going to do right by you. The next thing you need for yourself is wisdom, and to rely again on your gut and your instincts and your intuition in this particular process. You don't really know the language of law. And I found myself in court often like not knowing what was happening and looking around like, what just happened? But you're going to need to pay attention. You're going to need to listen. You're going to need to understand what's happening, and at times rely on your wisdom and intuition in order to get what you need. The reality is no matter how great your attorney is, they don't go home with you at night. They don't live your life. They don't live your experience. This is your court battle, and you're going to need to take responsibility for it. So for me, there were times when I politely interjected and asked the judge if I was able to speak up for myself, because my attorney just didn't know all the things. As much as I've shared with my attorneys, they just didn't know what happened last night, or they didn't know what happened 6 months ago, or this thing comes up in you that you think is relevant and you think is important to share. I wouldn't do it a lot. I wouldn't do it all the time. I would use good judgment on this, right? But speak up for yourself. This is your court process. This is your life that's hanging in the balance, and potentially the life of your children. And you want to be able to walk away feeling good about how you engaged in the process. There were times very early on when I didn't speak up, and I left the courtroom feeling really bad and really defeated. And I determined that I wasn't going to feel that way anymore. So there were times where I had to politely speak up and like interject and say some things on my behalf that needed to be said, and that I thought the judgment needed to hear in order to render good judgment in my particular case. And so rely on your wisdom and be courageous at times to do whatever it is you need to do to get the outcome that you want. If that means firing your attorney and hiring someone else, be courageous. If it means speaking up in court, be courageous. If it means saying no and standing firmly in what it is you believe and what your convictions are. Again, the purpose of this process for you is to reclaim your freedom. The purpose of this process for them, for the narcissist, is to destroy you and to potentially even chain you to them. So as you embark upon, agreements and potentially settling your case outside of trial, be sure that you don't agree to something that you will later not agree to. When this is all over, you don't want to come back to court. In some regard, some people feel like, I just want this over with. I'm going to settle. For me, I knew I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to deal with any attorneys again. I needed something in writing. When this was all said and done, before the judge signed on the dotted line, I needed something that I could live with without feeling like, I got to get up and go back to this court again. So sometimes you'll need to be really courageous and stand against their control, because even in this court process, they want to maintain control over you. And it is your job to ensure that they don't. And so, yeah, there's going to be times where you may be afraid to do something that's bold, or to do something that is within your right to do, especially when you think about your children. Your children are yours to raise, and I guess partially your exes or the narcissist to raise as well. The judge doesn't get to tell you how to raise your kids. You get to use your judgment on that. So, you may need to stand against what you think the perceptions of others are in this particular case, and what the perception of the judge will be, and just stand up and be who you are. And if you are the safe parent or the protective parent, stand up and be that. You just don't want to protect your kids to the degree that you begin to encroach upon the law, or you begin to break the law in some way, shape, or form. You want to still be, it's difficult. You want to be kind of beyond reproach on some level, but you also want to just be human. You want to be relatable. You're going to make mistakes. And when you're sitting in that courtroom and you've made a mistake, you don't necessarily need to stand up and own it every time. Sometimes you can just actually, most of the times for me, in fact, all the time, I let the narcissist accuse me of all sorts of things. Some of them might have even been true, and some of them were true, and I didn't think it was anything wrong with it. I didn't stand up and contest every single thing he said. In fact, I didn't contest any of the things that he said about me. If the judge was concerned about it and they wanted to ask me and approach me with whatever it is he presented, then I would respond. But I never responded out of turn, especially to accusations. I just sat quietly, had to maybe take some deep breaths at a time, or after it was all over, I might have needed a glass of wine, but I did not engage in that sort of battle. The battle that I was focused on was the battle that I determined and set for myself. And again, it was the battle for my freedom, not the battle to be right, not the battle to, destroy them, because that takes too much energy and effort. It was the battle for my own freedom. And so I hope that this really helps you as you navigate your journey, because if you're doing it right, and I hate to kind of say there's a right and a wrong way to do it, but if you're doing this right, you will need to focus on the battle for your freedom. And everything else is a distraction. It might be quicksand. It's a diversion from whatever it is that you are attempting to do for yourself and your children. And I hope this helps you on your journey. Thank you again for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.